All right, so we have our map view in our example application working just perfectly. It's centering on Austin just like we would like it to. Now what we want to do is take it one step further and get our current location. And we can actually do that using what's known as a CLLocationManager. So if I scroll up to the top here, a CLLocationManager allows you to get that coordinates of where your device is currently located. So what we'll do is we'll get the CLLocationManager and we're going to create a new instance of it. But first, we will pass in a method that we haven't yet created, but we will in just a second. So it'll be called getLocation, and we'll create that right now, getLocation. And in that, we're going to set a variable known as LocationManager to CLLocationManager, and we're going to create that. So we put the .new. Then what we need to do is, if you look in the documentation, you need to access, or you need to set the delegate property. And so all you have to do is put a .delegate, and this delegate will set it to self. If you check here, the delegate object is the one to receive the update. So we want this controller to receive the updates, and then we'll go ahead and we'll display it accordingly. And then what we need to do next is we actually need to ask permission. So we will request, and I'm going to use the request always authorization, and that should be in here as well, request always authorization. And this basically shows a prompt to the user asking them to either allow or don't allow the application to use their current location or to get their current location. And this is just basically a privacy setting that you need to account for within your application. So we're going to set that Location Manager request always authorization. We're going to make sure that it gets called. Once that's called, if they go ahead and they allow us to go ahead and use their location, what we need to do is we need to tell the application how accurate of a coordinate we want it to get for us. So what we'll do is we'll get that variable and we'll use desired accuracy. And if you take a look at the documentation here for desired accuracy, what happens is, if I go back, desired accuracy. So if we click on that constant right there, you'll see a list of different constants that we can use. We can get everything from best for navigation all the way to accuracy of being 3 kilometers. Coordinate you might get will be in a radius of about 3 kilometers of accuracy. For this example, we're just going to use the accuracy of a kilometer. And so I'll grab that right there. Now keep in mind, the more accurate you are, the more battery life it's going to use on that device. So keep that in mind when you're creating something like this where it's using the current location. And actually, let me use the accuracy nearest 10 meters for this example. And so I'll paste that in there. Now in RubyMotion, you need to capitalize this constant. So you need to go from a lowercase k to a capital K. And then what we'll do is we will set what is known as let me go back into that documentation. Okay, great. So you need to use a distance filter, and this will be the minimum distance measured in meters a device must move horizontally before an update event is generated. So how far do you want that person or that device to move from the old position to a new position before a new coordinate is given? And so what we'll do is we'll set this to about 50. So this is again in meters. So the device distance filter in meters, every 25 meters, I want it to update the location manager with the new coordinates. Then what we need to do is tell the location manager to actually update. So location manager, let me go back into that documentation. Location manager, update, start updating location. Okay, so start updating location, and we'll pass that through just like we did request always authorization. And then what we should do actually is check to make sure that location settings are on. If it's on, then we'll go ahead and run this code. And to do that, we will pass in an if statement. So if the core location manager dot location services enabled is, I believe, what we need to pass through there. Service location enabled returns a boolean indicating whether location services are enabled on device. Okay, great. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. Then we'll go ahead and we'll indent that and close off that if statement. Okay, now we've got this passed through, we've got this called, and let's go ahead and try to run it just to see what happens. Okay, so we'll go ahead and fire up our device. And then we'll navigate to our map, and it crashes. Let's see why. Okay, undefined. Let's see. Location services. Oh, I misspelled that. Okay. Location services enabled. Let's fire that back up, and that should work this time. Okay, great. It's not crashing. That means that this code is definitely running, but we aren't returning anything, so we don't actually know. And another thing to recognize is that this request always authorization, it's not actually requesting anything. So let's first deal with the coordinates returning into the console. Then we need to actually add in another step, and that step would be adding to our rake file some information. So let's go ahead and let's pass through. Create a method. So location manager, we need to pass through a method that tells it what to do when the location has been updated. So let's go ahead and look for that method. So location manager did update locations. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we'll go ahead and, as usual, we'll paste in the Objective-C, and we're looking for a location manager. So I'm going to pass in a variable for the parameter right there, and then did update. I'll just copy that. Did update locations. So we're using those variables as the parameters, and the application will actually pass in the information for you. So what we'll do is we'll put the location coordinate equals and some string interpolation there, locations. Great. So now when the location is updated, what will happen is it'll put that location into our terminal, into our console right there. Now, I mentioned earlier that we actually need to do or take one more step with the request always authorization. We need to add in a key in our plist. So if we go to Coco keys and we look for the NS location always usage description, what we want to do is we need to pass this into our rake file. So what we'll do is we'll open up our rake file, and let's see. In the app setup, we need to pass in the info. So it'll be info underscore plist, and then we're going to pass in the name for the NS location always usage description. Okay, so we'll pass that into there. And then it needs to be a string on why you need access to the location. And this will actually show up on the permission alert. So the example app needs your location just because. Now you want to give a valid reason in there if you're going to be deploying this to the App Store. Now, along with this, I'm going to set another one. This one is NS location always usage description. Now, I read that there is a when using app description one, and so we'll go back to Safari and we'll take a look here. When in use usage description, that's the one we want to pass through. That basically allows you to change it from request always authorization to request when in use authorization. But I'm going to leave it as always authorization. And always authorization is allowing the app to use your location even when you're not using the app. So even when it's not in the forefront of the view for that user. So it can go ahead and use it at any time. For example, when you're creating a navigation app, you always want the application to know where their location is, especially if it's trying to give them directions. Okay, so request always authorization. And with that added into our info plist, it should actually now ask us what whether or not we can, or whether or not it'll allow us to use the location. So find that up again, and going to map, and then the alert disappeared. Now this is something I ran into and I couldn't figure out for a while until I actually went to Stack Overflow and I looked on, let's see, it was current location permission dialog disappears too quickly, and then I read this, and basically all you have to do is go into your location area, your location manager, and set this to an instance variable. So I'll do that. I'll select them all, and then you just add in the @ sign. And then what we'll do is we'll hit run again, and this time that pop-up, that alert that allows or doesn't allow, should stay until the user interacts with it. Okay, so that's exactly what we want it to do. And now I can either choose to not allow or to allow. So I'm going to allow this application to read our location.